Welcome to the Tough Fish Show. I am so excited to bring to you Lorraine Hawley. Lorraine, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're here, and I would love for you to start with how did you get into writing?
Well, I think my writing career took a little bit different approach than a lot of people or a lot of authors. I didn't start writing in a more professional capacity until I was in my 40s. So I was in the third chapter of my life. My daughter had just gone off to college, and I was trying to find more of a hobby and a way to communicate with some people. I wanted to have some social interactions. So I was looking for that hobby, something I might enjoy doing. And I went online, and mind you, I've always enjoyed writing, but it was just kind of for me. And I've also done blog marketing and things like that. So I thought, well, I'm going to just meet some people and start learning how to write a book. So I went online and I looked up where's writing groups. And I came into this thing called meetup.com, and it's everywhere. And I went on and I said, where's a writing group next to me? And I found two. And I started attending these writing groups. I went in with 1,500 words, like they said. And I was like, I am not reading this. There's no way. And a very kind author next to me says, you have to start somewhere. Just speak. So I sat down and I read my first words. And everybody gave me this feedback. And they were so kind and really kind, because I would love to have that paper. It was really bad. So I liked them. I was able to go in and have coffee and visit. And so with that being said, that started my journey. And as I spent many, many years in this writing group, these two writing groups, meeting people, loving the community, I decided that I wanted to take it more serious. And I just honed my craft. I spent that 10,000 hours, so to speak, making sure I was there in writing groups, and I did online conferences, and that was maybe my way of getting into my third chapter comfortably. My husband and I were trying to figure out, hey, we're all by ourselves now. So that's where I started. So a lot of, like I tell people now, well, where do you want to start with writing? How do you even start? You just start, right? You just get in there and be brave.
So with that, and talking about being brave, what was it like when you did first share the first few words that you wrote, and they were like, no, really, it's for you to share it, speak it, but share it in front of others? What was that like, and how did you know that you could do it?
I didn't think I could. I think I talked very quickly. I took out my paper and we handed it to everybody, and I followed directions. They said bring 5 papers and da da da. So when I started to read, I'm reading my words, and I can tell, wow, do they sound different when I'm saying them out loud? And as people are giving me this feedback, like I didn't know certain things. I didn't even understand point of view shift. What is that? First person, second person? I didn't know. So I felt my heart racing. I felt my words pouring out very quickly. And I looked across and I'm seeing this kindness and people saying, it's okay, just keep going. So by the time I got done with reading my piece and they started explaining to me some things, I was like writing really quick, kind of looking down. But then I went home and I thought, you did it, and I was probably in the older portion of the group, and it was actually a little bit more male populated. The group, it was a public group in that particular one. With that being said, over through the years, I ended up being a moderator of that group, and I spent several years moderating the group, but I had to learn just basics.
So I love that, because, I mean, to your point, one of the things that you had to do was just allow yourself to be vulnerable and receive feedback. So it was a form of editing, kind of critiquing feedback just by hearing other people's perspective of, hey, point of view, hey, that's more showing, or there's more telling here, not enough showing, or what have you. But the other side to that was that you came away with more than just saying, so I've got more tips on how to improve the next chapter or what to go back and rework in this chapter. but you also gained a confidence to say, if I did this, I can do it again. I can show up again and do this process however many times I need to help get this idea out. So when you first presented this story, is it the one that you got published, or was it something else?
You know what? It wasn't the one I got published. At that point, I was, funny enough, it may be the one that may be next. It was a dream idea that I had had a long time ago. My mother had introduced me to some things in life that I wanted to write a story about, but was well above my skill level at that time. And so I needed to start from scratch. And that's what I did. I learned how to do small stories, and then I started building upon them. But the one that I did get published was initially with that group, the 2 groups that I joined. But yeah, I think like anything, you have to learn first, and maybe even the story you come in with isn't the one you leave with, or even your first published.
Oh, I love that. And to your point, even starting small, even the sense of saying, hey, I've written a short story and I did this short story and I got it published, or I wrote a novella and then I got it published, or what have you, because just those pieces, even if it's a blog post, you've written something, you've published it, you're doing it again. And just that act of writing, editing, honing, publishing it in some way and doing it again is growing and strengthening your craft and strengthening your confidence to show up and keep pursuing a passion and pursuing a business too.
Oh yeah. And I think that for a lot of people, starting with blog posts are a fantastic opportunity. I did a lot of marketing first. And so I learned how to get so much of my information shorter paragraphs and get my point across. And I think the same thing happened with blog posts. I really love traveling and I love family activities and I like to share those. And so I started a little a website basically that shared those ideas with, and the readership was really great. And there was nothing to sell. It was just me explaining the things I like to travel with. I learned a lot through that as well. And sometimes I would bring those blog posts to my group and say, what do you think of this?
I love that.
Right. So to me, I always tell people, you just need to find your people. You need to be brave. We tell kids all the time, and as a children's writer, I say to these children, we need to be brave. We need to put ourselves out there. We need to be able to do these things. And yet, as adults, we still hide behind that a little bit, right? So maybe we need to speak to our own inner child and say, tell yourself what you would have told yourself in that grade level. Get out there and just do it. Try it.
I love that. Okay, so you've touched on a few things here. With the power of the community and finding that right community, because it's not just any community really, it's finding the right community that helps, that nurtures you and you also nurture. So do you have some suggestions or tips for someone who might be struggling trying to find that right group for themselves?
Right. And it's kind of a little bit harder right now. We're still in a situation where Zoom is now the newest way to communicate. So I honestly tell people you need to be okay trying a couple of things and never give up the first time you try. When you go to a meeting, go to it twice. At the second time, if you're still questioning it, that's when you might want to say, maybe I need to find another group. You need to make sure that the people you're around are positive and that you're not walking into a group where sometimes you get those critique partners that just want to, everything you say is something they want to teach you, and it's very rudely. So I think that the meetup group, meetup.com, go on there, find your place. And social media right now, there are some fantastic ones, even in Facebook. They have like the publishing conferences, and you start talking to people. That's how we met, you and I, right? We just were talking and maybe networking and saying, hey, this is what I'm looking at. And we started talking, and therefore now we have our new friendship.
Right.
And these are people that we can talk to. Like, so it's not just there. There's also contests online that are super fun and ways to communicate. You don't have to get in. So we talked about like Pitch War and PitMed and all of these different competitions. everybody thinks it's about trying to get your piece into the showcase. And it is, of course, that's like the golden ticket, right? But really, is it? Most of the time I go on and I start communicating with the other authors, and I have met the best people. In fact, my critique partner came from, her and I both did pitch wars, I don't know, maybe in 2017. And we got a wonderful mentor who said, did not pick either one of us, but said, you guys would be good together, and put us together as critique partners. And then with that, I found that these contests became a very great medium to meet critique partners. And one of the ones I did, and I got into the showcase, so it was called Write Mentor, and that's WRITE Mentor, MENTOR. And they are a program that's international, and they have a amazing summer program that starts in April. Like, you can start putting it through Twitter, and you can get your piece maybe in the showcase. But even if you don't, again, this is where you gain your friendships, your people, right?
Very, very cool. I love so much that you shared that. And I like how you demonstrated that there's really community inside as from being an author and sharing your work. It's not about that competition. It's really about the community and the collaboration, because I mean, if one reader is interested in the genre and you both are writing in that genre, who knows, they might like both. And even if a writer says, hey, a reader says, hey, I'm more interested in another, something different, or that's now not my grade level anymore, especially when writing children's books.
Right.
I look at that and say, that's okay. That means you still like reading. What are you reading now? And maybe I can suggest another author that's more in the reading spaces now that you're reading, versus saying, oh, well, you've gone beyond chapter books or middle grade books. So what else might you be interested in? So to me, I think what it's doing is also helping to foster that love of writing and reading and literacy in general.
And we never know what we're going to write. So I write middle grade fantasy. I love middle grade fantasy. And I have two things, but I also have written an adult. So you're right. Our communities, in my particular critique group, I have people who write poetry. I have people that write blogs. I have people that write, memoirs. I don't necessarily think it's the right choice to just find somebody in your genre. I think that you have to get really good feedback. It's important to have different writers too. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I like that, because the different genres, or even by bringing in an editor in your space, that also helps to kind of to get a different perspective on that piece, with the whole intention of saying, I'm trusting you to come into this space to help with this manuscript by offering constructive feedback or encouragement or what have you, because you see potential here, and you believe, and you want me to get this out, and you see that there's something there that's going to, that's a story that's worth sharing, that people will want to read. Thank you for believing in me, looking at it from that standpoint of thank you for helping me to grow, and seeing it as a gift, as something positive, provided that it is done with kindness and constructiveness.
Yes, but they understand the compliment sandwich a little bit, right? Although I'm not going to lie, I have had a critique partner that maybe wasn't as capable of being kind in some manners, but gave some of the best feedback. And as a human being, I really liked this person, and I just knew that was their personality. And sometimes everybody has that different personality. You just have to realize it takes a while, maybe that they have no intentions of being unkind.
Right.
They just are like, this is the situation, this is how we deal with it. And I have gotten great feedback that way too. But you gotta have tougher skin, right?
But I love that you shared that, because that's also something to be mindful of, that when you are sharing your pieces, that you are developing a bit more resilience in how you bounce back from feedback, or bounce back from a rejection if you're pitching for a query in your querying process or what have you, that there is that element of bouncing back and learning how to do that so that you feel good with it, because there are times when it can get to you and there are times when it can feel like, no, it's going to be okay. So, I mean, I totally understand that. But I would love to switch gears a little bit on you, if you would. And would you talk a little bit about how did you decide to specifically write for middle grade? And I love that you chose fantasy. So I, I love that. Would you talk a bit more about how you decided to write specifically for this age group and this genre? I would love that.
Well, I think that middle grade is such an important age. I think that the kids are, they're going through so much and they're struggling with a lot of things, not just friendships, but their identity and where they stand in the world. And sometimes we can help them to see their own potential or see themselves, because it's a very I-centric age. And it's really hard for them to see that other kids are going through the same thing that they might be going through. I kind of purposely, in this middle grade book that I wrote, Curious World of Dandelion, I purposely made areas in it from different perspectives, so that, and I don't want to give anything away, but the main character, she has her struggles. And if I say, she's a remarkably sensitive girl trying to make friends in an impossible fifth grade world filled with fantastical creatures that only she can see. And so her world is very I-centric. Her problem, she needs to make a friend who's going to help her to overcome this obstacle that she has. She wants to help this neighbor who is a widower, who was like a grandfather to her, that is just for some reason is hiding out in his house, and she can't figure out why. So as she's going through this process of trying to make a friend to help her, she's got these magical creatures just popping in and out of her world. And so one of the things I try to make that's important is that the other characters have lives going on. And it's not just about her. And so while she is so busy figuring out what is up with her life, I make sure to point out that the other main characters, she has this friend, Jax, and this other bully, right, Billy, they have their own ways that they're seeing things too. So
I love that.
that's why I like middle grade, is because sometimes I think with kids, they don't mean to be eccentric. It's just that's part of the growing process, right? How do we become more global? We start kind of with the I and figure out how to become more global.
So when you were creating this world, so it will feel real to your readers, but also to your characters. What was that like? What were some of the things that you did to help create this fantastical, magical world?
So Meredith, she has high sensitivity. So Meredith, and I can relate to that really easily, so it kind of helped me a little bit. She has the sensitivities to sights and smells and sounds and all of these things going on around her, and they're just hyper aware. And which is something that 15% of the population deals with. And it's something that they learn to cope with. And a lot of people, it's not even a diagnosis in itself. A lot of people have diagnoses that also include sensitivity, but sensitivity also on its own is its own thing. Most people believe that it is a survival mechanism. That's why you see it a lot of times with kids who've had some PTSD, or even children who have been intubated as infants. They have swallowing problems and texture problems. They don't swallow. Or if somebody has a skin difficulty, they may be sensitive to textures on their skin. So with that being said, in this particular book, I like to bring out a lot of her sensitivities. I like to bring out, the mechanisms in the writing. So when we write, we tend to write what we see and what we hear, right? So to bring it all the way around, and especially with middle grade writing, is to consider bringing in the rest of the senses. Don't forget that your character is tasting things, your character is feeling things, your character has I don't know, just all kinds of see, smell, taste, sense.
So did you do that for each of the characters or only on certain characters?
No, mostly Meredith. I mean, Meredith, because I get, she is the main character dealing with that issue. But Jax has his own things going on in his life, and Billy has his own things going on in his life. But I do try to make sure every single character has their own senses throughout the book.
So when you were creating this world, and you're also creating the dimension of the character, so it's creating a complex and well-developed character because of those pieces that you're really, and we're talking somewhat about show and versus tell, but really we're also talking about that in the context of like what that character could be going through personality wise, not just necessarily the idea of showing the action or showing what's going on versus just telling what's happening versus, showing anger versus saying I'm angry or something like that. So it, because of the nuances that you're writing, did you run into any challenges that you needed to work through in order to help make sure that all of the parts that you were creating of a fantasy world, the creating the story pieces in general, plus being mindful of this particular character that you're really putting this extra love into, did you run into any hurdles or challenges?
Yes, without giving a lot away, one of the bigger challenges was trying to make sure that what she sees and how it's occurring around her and how other people are seeing what she's doing. Like in one particular scene, she is reacting to, she has a nemesis who is also kind of her best friend, and he's a rhinoceros beetle, and his name is Floss. And Floss just loves to wreak havoc on Meredith's life. So yes, and you can only imagine being in 5th grade and trying to make a friend, and you have this very quirky little rhinoceros beetle running around. And so she has a scene where she is trying to make a friend and something happens. It's just a very unfortunate situation for her. And she kind of goes after the little beetle and she's yelling at him. So the question is, what is everybody else seeing around them? And what does that sense look to them as compared to what it looks like to her? So that was probably one of the bigger challenges with the magical world. As for the senses, like I said, Meredith has like noise sensitivities. So things that other kids aren't aware of, for example, like for me, I have noise sensitivity. So when I'll use a writing conference, for example, I was at a writing conference, lovely people all around me, the speakers up front, and behind me is this lovely woman. And the entire time that I'm trying to listen, she's scratching her arm. You see how that sounds? And that's all I heard. That's all I could hear the entire. And so I had to finally get up and move seats. So distraction noises for her are big. They cut into everything. So I had to make that really clear throughout, like when she smelled something, how she would react to it compared to, let's say, Billy, who doesn't care about any smell whatsoever. Right.
But I love that because that's also really being clear about who your character is, really having the look as you're thinking about this character and writing these scenes and such, that you're thinking about how this character is going to react to something and how this other character might react. So did you, in doing this, did you were you clear on the point of view that you chose? Meaning that did you start out the book in one point of view and then realize you think you might need to switch, or was the first one that you chose the right path for you as you were working through your story?
Yes. So I used first person in this one, and I stayed in the first person present tense. And this was a difficult decision because I considered being a third person. First person present tense is one of those ones that can be hit or miss. And I had at first tried it third person past tense, but Meredith needed in the moment. Every decision she made had to happen right then, just the way she was feeling it. And so when I tried to write it in third person, it was distancing too far from her sense of smells and how it was overwhelming her. So I took the risk. And I really do think it was a risk because, boy, when you look at talking to different agents or you talk to publishers, like they say, and especially at that time, well, maybe not first person. But I think that we need to, as writers, understand our characters and understand what we're trying to accomplish. And so if I got into anybody else's head in this particular book, it would not do well. I needed every reaction from Meredith to be right. I didn't want her to have the force to think about it afterwards. When you do the past tense, then that occurred in the past. She has an opinion about it. right? Whereas I'm doing present tense, she is right there. That smell comes out, she is reacting to it, and she is doing it in the moment. So
I love that. So one of the things that I'm hearing in what you're saying is the trusting your vision, trusting what you are envisioning for your story, for this book, for the characters. And yes, the writing community, the critique partner or the editor, whomever that you're working with, that village, if you will, that they are all helping to hone this story and to bring it out in the best way possible. But it's also important when you are going back, synthesizing that feedback from others, going back through your iterations and so forth, recognizing, okay, does this still honor what's going on, and the best way to tell this story, the best way for these characters to show up and experience this journey that they're on. So I love that you basically you're showing the way to honor your vision and trusting yourself in the process, even when it seems like it is counterintuitive. Just like you're saying with it felt like a risk because in general, other organizations or, the agents and publishers might typically look for one way, but you presented another way and said, but this is why this is important. And I love that. I love that so much.
they say this a lot of times, right? You can break the rules if you know why you're breaking them and you feel that it's the right choice to break them. And I'm not saying that first person or present tense is breaking any rules now. I think that actually kind of is very open. I read more now and I go, oh, well, more books that are in first person present tense. But at that time, and especially with the critique group, I got a lot of, I don't know, right? Try it. And so you'll see, I do have probably half of my manuscript in third person past. And I don't even, Meredith, I lost her. I lost her in it. And I knew that was the wrong choice. But try it.
No, I love that, because to your point, you might need to see it in a few chapters to figure out, is this flowing? Is this working the way it's being written? Or do I need to change gears? And if I change gears and I change point of view and tense, will that create the feeling that I want this story to feel for that reader, for the characters, for myself, even when writing? So yeah, I love that. And it's okay to change point of view. Even if it might feel a little tedious when you're going back through and literally having to look at every piece, but in the same breath, if it's honing the craft, if it's honing your story, then you're going to have a great experience for you and for your reader.
And you're correct. And you know what else is so funny about that is, like, you can try different books you're going to write if you want to hone your craft. My second book, I purposely, like you, went adult third person past tense because that was part of my learning process. I want to know how to do these different things. So, but try it. You'll know. It's your art. When you're reading it, you know if it's right. And just be ready to change, even though sometimes you go, okay, this is better if I change it, but boy, that's going to be a lot of work. But this is your art. So just be true to yourself on it.
Yes, I love that. This is your art. Absolutely. Lorraine, this has been awesome. Where can people connect with you, and where can they get your books, and where can they find out about all of the books?
Wow, wonderful. Okay, so well, you can connect with me on my website. I'm at www.lorrainehawley.com. Last name is Hawley. And my book, Curious World of Dandelion, is available on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon and probably a lot of online book places. And I would love to connect. I'm on social media, Twitter, all of those things. So if you go to my website and you click that, you'll be able to follow me on that.
Awesome. Lorraine, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.